Hey everybody, it's Carrie Lee Signan from the Northampton Center for Couples Therapy, and I'm just streaming in today. I wanted to talk with you about some thoughts I've had regarding the idea of judging each other's grief. Now, I came up with this thought after listening to a recent podcast with Brene Brown that was with David Kessler. David Kessler is a real pioneer in grief work. He did work with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and he's known for creating what's considered the sixth stage of grief, which is finding meaning. And for those of you who are more interested in grief, he's got a new book out called Finding Meaning. I was listening to him talk recently to Brene Brown, and she was talking to him about couples who lose children. I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but there's a lot of studies out there that show one of the groups of couples that are most at risk for divorce are couples who have to navigate critical illness and death of children. And Brene asks David Kessler a really great question, which is simply, what are his thoughts around why couples split up who are navigating the loss of a child? Is it just because the loss in and of itself is so painful and so excruciating and devastating that it sort of shatters the fabric of the relationship? Or is there more to it than that? And he said something that really left me kind of speechless, and I've been thinking about it for 2 days since. He said couples don't divorce because they lose a child. Couples end up divorcing because they judge each other's grief when they grieve in different ways. And the ramifications of this, if it's true, and I think that it probably has some significant merit to it, the ramifications of this are huge, because what this is about is when you have a couple and in a relationship, you have people who are dealing with emotions in very different ways. Sooner or later, when the couple has to navigate something really hard, what's going to happen is there's likely going to be increased conflict or distance that grows between the couple. And so hi Victor, when you have a couple who's navigating any kind of loss, any kind of grief, and they're doing it differently, that in and of itself is hard. That's the first thing to note. But then the layer that we add onto it, the layer that makes it more difficult, isn't just that we navigate pain differently, it's that we get into judging how other people navigate it in a way that usually has a little bit of self-righteous indignation to it. No matter what you say, it probably has a little bit of that because we're vulnerable to that as people. Brent Atkinson calls that misplaced assumption of overall blame. It's the idea of, hey, the way I cope with pain and grief or heartache is a little bit more okay with the way you cope with it. Now, how this might look in a couple is one person might be prone to coping very internally with difficult things, shutting down, being quiet, going to their devices, not wanting to process things a lot. And where you can get into real trouble is when you have somebody else who wants to, navigate it really differently. So somebody else might want to talk about it, might be crying, might be yelling at the heavens. In Gottman language, we call that a meta-emotion mismatch. So why am I talking about this right now? I'm talking about this right now because I think that how we navigate grief, whether it's over the loss of a child, or it's over the loss of a dream, or it's over the loss of a marriage, or in this case, it's the losses are probably really layered, right? With COVID-19. How we navigate that and then how we do it differently than our partner is likely to be something that potentially can cause some real bumps that we get into. Now, another thing I want to speak to that's really important here is an idea that Stan Tatkin, who is also a fantastic person to listen to in the field of relationship health and distress, talks about, which is about being in the foxhole together, okay? The idea that we're in the foxhole together when we're a family or when we're partnered. And if you're going to be in the foxhole with somebody, you need to be working together as a team. You need to be a two-person system. You need to have each other's backs, because what happens when you're in the foxhole with someone, if you don't have their back, is if your partner goes down, you go down. Or if you go down, your partner goes down. You are interconnected. And so you can see when you have something like as challenging as grief, again, regardless of what's causing it, if you're dealing with it differently, if your partner's down on their knees in the foxhole, like they're out for the count, and your main reaction is to get into judging that or to be more focused on how that hits you, you can see that the way it hits you is it's going to take you out too, because you've got somebody over there who can't breathe. And so the antidote to this is really counterintuitive. The antidote to this is in the moments when you feel like what needs to be tended to most is your own pain, the priority really needs to be on ministering to your partner so that they don't go down. And you need to have a deal between the two of you that hopefully you come to when you're in a better place, which is that if you go down, my job is to help bring you back up. And if I go down, you're committed to bringing me back up. And there's reciprocity there. There is equal regard. There is mutuality. And relationships have to have mutuality. Relationships have to be fair and just. If they're not, then we're in this alone together. My dog feels very strongly about this too. So that's what that's all I want to say today. Just some quick thoughts on how we are vulnerable to judging each other's grief, how I think we're all navigating a ton of grief out there right now, and I'm going to have a lot more to say about it in the coming days, okay? Thanks for listening.